Hello, guys. So, in the midst of COP30, in a world desperately looking for its net zero ambition, but also continued growth, is it possible at all to rewrite the rule of oil and gas? That's a very good question. Well, there's at least one entrepreneur that I know who is rising to this challenge, and his name is Sean McNeill. Sorry, let me just correct that. So, Sean McNeill is the founder and CEO of Zenco Group. It's a company isn't just producing biofuel, but they are literally reimagining petroleum itself, grown, not extracted. It's important to note the difference. So their proprietary algae and seaweed technology transform sunlight and also marine crops into renewable diesel, aviation fuel, but also industrial chemical that drop seamlessly into the existing infrastructure. And in a world still locked into fossil fuel system, Sean and his team, they're building a bridge from extraction dependency to renewable abundance. And this is exactly what I want to talk to you in a minute. See you in a minute. Hello, everybody. How are you doing? My name is Tony. I'm the founder and CEO of RIA. So what we do is very simple. We raise awareness about renewable energy and sustainability. If you're interested to expand into the continent of Africa, we are your eco bridge to this market, and we can bring you three things: the visibility, the leads, and also the deals. Or if you say, hey, I want to be decarbonizing, we again the eco bridge to sustainable pathway. And what we can do is to help you with carbon footprint assessment, carbon reduction strategy. In fact, recently we released Africa, which is a marketplace for African carbon credit. But that we can talk about another day. But today, without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Sean McNeill. So, Sean, are you with us? I could see you here. How
Hi,
are you?
Tony. I'm good, thanks, Tony. How are you?
It's very good, very good, and it's a pleasure for me to have you on the platform because you know that you're onto something so interesting. I was really counting the days, until I can bring you to the platform for you to give us a bit more information about that. But before we dive a little bit more deeper into what we're going to talk about here, which is obviously Zenco Group, the company that you are building and expanding. So maybe you want to give us a little bit of introduction about who is Sean McNeill.
Well, thanks for Tony. Thanks, Tony. It's great to be here for a start. So, yeah, a little bit about myself. So, originally electrician by trade. I sort of moved away from Scunthorpe up in North Lincolnshire around about 9 years ago to really start my entrepreneurial journey. I've been living down in Cornwall ever since, and actually in the process of sort of relocating somewhere new, actually, which we'll probably go into in a bit. So, yeah, and I've been trying to be an entrepreneur for a number of years. Took a lot of lessons during that time, and now I think I've been able to pick up a lot of fails, but hopefully this is going to be the big success at the same time, taking what I've learned up until now. So yeah, no, great to be here, Tony. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So we're going to talk about the company that you've built. And as I say, so today I want to talk about a few things, right? I want to start with the big why, understanding what is the problem behind the Zenco missions. And I know you talked about the lock-in crisis. You've described a world dependent on oil and gas infrastructure, as a replacement for reality gap. But why does the world, according to you, is still struggling to replace fossil fuel, despite the decade of innovation that we've seen and had?
I think that's a really good question. And I think the reality comes down to is that we've not actually got a technology problem, which is something that other people are trying to fix. Like you say, we've actually got an infrastructure problem, and that is that we have built an infrastructure over the past 100 years that is designated and designed to take, petroleum-based products, hydrocarbons, as a whole, and because of that situation, it's not going to take us 100. It's still going to take us a good 100 years to rebuild an electrical infrastructure to try and match that we've already built. So, in my view, I've always thought the problem isn't necessarily the technology we're using to generate. It is more around the fuel we're using to run down that existing infrastructure. Um, and it's one of the big things that we see as well is people refer to oil as fuel, and it's not just fuel that we have the problem with. It's also the materials that come from fuel, such as naphtha, plastics, chemicals, and all the other bits and bobs that come from, bitumen, the stuff that we build roads with. So it's not just energy that comes from oil; it's all the other things as well. So we're going to be constantly locked into oil for a hell of a long time yet.
No,
Sorry, I
you can
can't
hear
hear.
me. You can hear me now. Okay, excellent. I think I was just talking to myself here. So thanks for mentioning that. So I want to come back to that epiphany moment that I'm sure you've gone through, like many other entrepreneurs. So what moment really made you realize that growing oil and gas instead of extracting it was probably the key to solving it? Was it like a personal turning point for frustration that led to the model? So what was that really?
It was a big company pivot actually, which sort of really fused the fire for us to start focusing on this. And it was we started the business as offshore solar. Offshore solar was basically a company that had designed a offshore floating solar and seaweed farm technology. And the intention was to always connect the solar power into the grid to sell the electric, and then harvest the seaweed then to produce the gas. And throughout this year, as many people know, during the sort of connections reshuffle, as Nesso were calling it, we recognise that the wind sector is going to be able to very much get priority over the connections, which means that we're going to get pushed to the back of the queue. And because of that, we thought, well, hang on a minute. If we're generating electricity from solar, which is obviously a clean electricity, and we've got a crop that we know we can turn into hydrocarbons, why can't we use that electricity to effectively run that process and just do it more at scale? So effectively, instead of using gas as a product to run down existing infrastructure, we recognize that electrical infrastructure is still too premature to take new technologies all the time. But actually, we could effectively take every kilowatt hour of electric and turn it into a kilowatt hour of gas instead. So it was almost looking and a technology as well, a tangible asset that could also be stored, transported, then generated to create heat or power. And all of a sudden, you start unpicking the foundations of the basic fundamentals of what oil and gas actually is. And then going down that road of using marine crops, we thought, well, what other crops that are marine and compliant with a lot of technologies can be used then to create other problems that we have, such as oil? And then we started going down the road of using microalgae to create that. Both crops absorbing intense amount of CO2 from the environment, but then can also then create the core products that we actually need. And when we look back at where oil and gas actually came from, there actually was originally, seaweed and algae that's been buried over sort of rocks and layers of rocks over millions of years to eventually become the product that we're going to create ourselves today.
Hmm. That's a very good observation, actually. So not many people would have seen oil and gas this way. No, that's it. Oh, like I said, like any innovation. So when you come up with such a beautiful idea, it always seems very simple, but one has to think about it. And I think you've had I would say the honor of be the one, so be sort of putting that all together. So if you were to summarize Zenco ultimate purpose in one sentence,
Yeah.
so what change are you trying to instill into this world?
We are trying to create oil and gas that is grown and not extracted using existing infrastructure, existing technology, and without green premiums. I think that's a key thing to all of this. We talk about the transition, we talk about what we're trying to do, but we need to be able to make it the same price as what oil and gas is today. So that's it, grown, not extracted, using existing infrastructure, existing technology, without any green premiums.
Yeah. Would you be able to do that at scale?
Yes, absolutely. Everything is down to scale, and you need to model it accordingly. The one thing that people don't take into consideration when using crops, especially to create oil and gas, is that there is a lot of other byproduct revenue streams that can also come from that crop. So it's been able to create in your model an overall sort of margin rather than individual product margins. So although we might not make a hell of a lot of margin, even at scale, on things like gas and oil, we can on things like fertilizer, CO2, RGGOs, green gas certifications, carbon credits, all the other revenue streams that can also come as byproducts of making this product.
Excellent. I think I'd like to understand a little bit more how this actually works, so the innovation model that you've built there.
Yeah.
You've talked about the zero compromise fuel and talking about how Zenco biocrude and also about methane, yeah, drop-in replacement, and then no infrastructure change are needed. I'm sure that is the one phrase that really attracts lots of potential investors. But can you sort of walk us through exactly what you mean by that?
No, absolutely. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to create something which can work in exactly what it is and use existing technology to do so. So in order for us to create the gas, for example, we extract the seaweed from the sea on a floating seaweed farm, well, a floating solar and seaweed farm. We take that in and then we'll run that through anaerobic digestion. Again, a bit of technology which has been grown and developed over the past couple of decades in order to create and extract the gas. Once that gas has been extracted, it has to go through then an upgrading process. And again, existing technology, membrane separation to extract the methane from the gas, leaving then the CO2 completely separately. That itself then gives us two separate revenue streams. So we've got the gas itself, and then we've got CO2, which after the membrane separation is a food grade CO2, which we use all the time in packaging, beverages, that sort of thing. So we then take the CO2, we can then liquefy it and then transport it around the world wherever it's needed as liquid renewable natural gas, for a better word, which is effectively a really, really high quality utility grade methane, but from a bio alternative. And then the same with the oil, using existing technology, hydrothermal liquefaction, which is effectively a massive pressure vessel with intense heat, and it follows the exact same process as what happens under the ground over the millions of years. It just does it in a couple of hours rather than the millions of years instead. So again, proven technology, just changing the different crops and the different formulas that we've built into our system to be able to create the two key products that's needed to then go into that infrastructure. Once that base oil and that base gas is made, it can then be moved around the world, moved to a refinery, and it can run through the exact same fractional distillation process as oil does to get the different fractions out of it: diesel, petrol, naphtha, jet fuel, kerosene, you name it. It can come out the same thing, and it's all down to the amount of hydrocarbon chains that are in that oil originally. And because we use 3 different strands of algae, all with different hydrocarbon chains, all that grow at different rates, we can blend. After the hydrothermal liquefaction process, we blend them to make a barrel of oil which has similar chemistry, similar hydrocarbon chains to extracted oil. So exactly the same consistency, ultra low sulfur, which is quite a key thing because most oils that come out will still contain quite a bit of sulfur. So as is ultra low sulfur, straight ready for refining. There's no pre-treatment needed. Excellent. So again, it's just using existing technology that's already there, just changing the formula slightly and changing the crop.
So what struck me there when you mentioned about compressing millions of years into a couple of hours, that's actually fascinating. Okay, that's what you call efficiency, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that stand out from the model that you're building is the dual country model that you have, which is obviously UAE and also UK. And you're using UAE, if I'm correct, for production, and also the UK for the refining. That's a part of the business. So why did you structure it this way? I mean, what kind of edge does it give to Zenco?
Well, the UAE has exactly what we need in terms of an environment perspective. In order to get the maximum yields out of the crop and also to run it off solar, we knew we needed somewhere where we was going to get continual solar energy, and not just say continual, but something that we're going to get 12 hours a day, 365 days of the year. So we knew exactly what our production is going to look like over a 12 and 24-month period. But also then the benefits of the warmer waters, the higher salinity, all the things that come within that sort of Persian Gulf and Arabian Gulf sort of region. So it was ideal place to start growing the crop and to start proving the concept of what it actually does. So that's what we're in the process. And when you look at the forward thinking of the GCC as a whole, but in particular the Emiratis, they are very focused on these different pillars of trying to improve manufacturing, improve the green credentials, trying to decarbonize what they're doing. So there's a very big focus around that, which is why we thought out of all of the GCC countries, the UAE really stood out for us. And when you look at their growth and their continuous development and their continuous eye on the future, it was the perfect environment to start with. But then that doesn't take away from what the UK has to offer. The UK has excellent energy policy in terms of being able to trade the gas and actually sell the gas. But it's also got great infrastructure in terms of being able to bring oil and gas through. And there's a high demand for gas. You know, one of the things that we predominantly need as people is heat. And we struggle to get that from electric, especially on the existing infrastructure that we have. So being able to provide that gas into the UK where there's a much higher demand, a great energy policy in terms of anything that we inject into the grid that's gas-wise will be bought up by some gas shipper. If it's none of the major gas shippers, it will be bought by National Gas, and it bought at market value. So we have the option to then trade on the spot market and be able to sell that gas accordingly. At the end of the day, we're still a business. We want to decarbonize, we want to focus on that, but we've got to trade like a business at the same time and make profit. And by using the gas and oils instead of electricity allows us to do that on a much more controlled way. So market opportunity in the UK is still very much there. The growth and scale and the environment for growing the crop is very much still in the UAE. And there's also a great treaty between the two countries. You know, the UK has been involved with the Emiratis for a lot of years, 60, 70 years plus, and has a key stamp in the Gulf region. So especially around oil, funnily enough. So it's good to sort of keep that heritage there going between the two countries and keep building that bridge.
Yeah. And when people listen to that, I'm sure some would say, that looks too good to be true, right? It looks like a pipe dream. And you talk about the market opportunity. But what about the market validation? So that's one of the questions that I'm sure will come naturally to people's mind. So the good news is here. So if I'm correct, so please let me know if I'm making false journey or not. But you've already secured a couple of interesting contracts. Maybe you want to talk about that, right? I know you're still at pre-stage, but you're already, like I say, interesting enough to have obviously attracted their attention. So what are those contracts, and what is the message sent to investors about market demand and execution credibility?
No, absolutely. So we've seen, for the gas especially, we've seen huge demand. We're actually working closely with a gas shipper called Voltex Power. Voltex Power is a new gas shipper to the market, and they're looking primarily to still supply renewable energy at the core part of their business. And we can supply that gas through that. So looking at a nice supply contract and an offtake agreement with them, we've agreed to sort of start supplying that gas in by the middle of next year, to start bringing that and inject it into the UK. But then when you start looking at the sort of wider opportunity that's also available outside of Voltex, we look at Cadent Gas and their biomethane projects and also their hydrogen projects as well, and how to decarbonize the gas grid. You look at a lot of the other gas DNOs that are also trying to do the exact same thing. So there's massive ambition to sort of look at biogases over extracted sort of North Sea gas or any other gas that's coming through, even LNG, in order to try and decarbonize that gas grid. What you need to find as well is that within the sort of infrastructure market, there is a race or a competition, if you like, about who can create, if the gas grid doesn't become decarbonized, for example, in the current policies, there's going to be no gas grid available. So everyone's going to switch to electric. But if gas can show that there's a net zero alternative in that as well, which by running biomethane, by running hydrogen, that's exactly what it's trying to do. It will also stay in complement to the electrical grid, just like we've always lived for the past 120 years. So it's really key to sort of work with the gas grid at the same time as the shippers to ensure that we're supplying that net zero gas, to ensure that the gas grid stays where it is. And actually, I was having a conversation with someone the other day. If you look at how much it actually costs to turn off the gas grid, it will probably cost two Sizewell C nuclear power stations in order to actually do that. So when you look at the cost of actually turning everything off and decommissioning the gas grid, it is, it's telephone numbers of cost to do that at the same time.
I'm not surprised that what you said has attracted a couple of people backing you up. And I actually have one testimonial for one of your investors. I think it's one of your first investors that I want to play around in here. So before we sort of carry on the conversation and talk about the business and the breakthrough. So let me just share very quickly these testimonials about just less than a couple of minutes. And after that, you could tell us a little bit more. So who he is, and then sort of what difference has he made to the business by backing you up. So let me just play that for you.
Why was I the first investor in Zenco Group, or offshore solar as it was at the time? I think fundamentally there are three things that I like to see to come together: the people, a purpose, and engineering. And with Sean leading the organisation, he's just one of the most can-do engineers I've ever come across. He's put together an incredible team, he's made fantastic connections, and he's a hands-on capable person. He knows, he's wired vast solar arrays, he knows how this stuff works. Then the purpose, to actually have a future where oil and gas and their products are grown rather than extracted, using solar energy, floating solar energy, whilst also making the seas healthier. Wow, how can you not see that as being such an incredibly exciting opportunity. And finally, the engineering, whilst the scale of it is complex, actually at its core, it's fairly simple and just an engineering problem. So those are the things, and I guess the other thing is the scale of the opportunity is just extraordinary. So that's why I was the first investor in the organisation, absolutely delighted to be, and looking for some more.
Excellent. We want to thank Paul in here, so obviously for his support for you, Sean, but also to Zenco. So how did you meet Paul, and how did you convince him? That's interesting to know.
Funnily enough, actually, I think I hijacked a meeting that I was meant to go for something else when I went to go meet Paul. So I went to go meet him on behalf of actually my colleague Sean Stapleton, and I actually hijacked the meeting for myself, unfortunately. So apologies, Sean, if he's on the chat. But no, I met Paul at the Institute of Directors office in London I think it was last May or April, quite early on.
Okay.
But honestly, a great guy, absolutely great guy. He's been such a mentor and advisor. He's always at the other end of the phone. He's really sort of supported me and guided me through some of the tough times and told me what to do and what not to do at the same time. I think that's always important as any founder, is that you should always feel confident to go and not just ask for support, but also ask if an idea that you've got is a good idea. And Paul's always been that sort of sounding board for me, as well as obviously supporting financially at the same time. He's probably brought more to the table as an advisor and a mentor at the same time. So I know, again, if Paul's listening, I can't thank him enough for being that sort of first person in and really helping and supporting us through that. But yeah, no regrets. Love the guy. He's been one of the best people to have on the team. So yeah, we're really proud to have Paul on board.
Well, I'm hoping that he's watching. If not watching live, that he's been watching the recording, because that's very important. So I want to thank him as well on behalf of Zenco and all the people watching, because he's giving the courage to all the other people sitting on the fence and saying, okay, is Sean a good bet or not, right? Paul is giving you the answer. So having said that, so let's talk about a little bit more about your fundraising. I know at the moment you're raising 500K in convertible notes. So I want to ask you the question, because I'm sure there's a number of potential investors watching because they find the idea interesting. How do I know that? Very simple. So last time we met, you and I, in London, was in Santander, so branch office, and obviously there was a friend of mine who knew that you were coming, and he went straight to talk to you. And since then, we posted on LinkedIn. There's a lot of reaction because people find the idea interesting. So replacing the oil and gas without changing the infrastructure by making it more green, who would say no to that, right? So the 500K that you want to raise, so where will the capital go, and what kind of milestone would you say it would unlock in the next, let's say, 12 months?
Yeah, so it's obviously it gives us a nice bit of runway as well as a company for that to just pay some working capital. But predominantly, the biggest thing that we're trying to do is secure the patents. Everything's sort of ready to file. We need to file those patents and get them in place, so we have that security sat in the company. That's quite a big thing that's going to come out of that money, as well as sort of sorting out the company structure at the same time. So being able to sell that parent co, having the two opcos sort of in place and ready to roll, and sorting out that company admin that's needed, as well as just finalising the R&D bits that we need to do to just sort of get the reportings of the yields and what that looks like, so we can then get instructed the ISCC to then start the auditing process of our production when we start construction. So it's a really key part for us to sort of get to where we need to do. It is more a sort of company financing to get a lot of the internal stuff sorted. And then that unlocks then the sort of project financing then that we've got secured in place, ready to roll as well.
Excellent. And then how has the traction been so far? So
it's been difficult, I must say. The UK economy is difficult. It's challenging, to say the least. We've had a couple of soft offers, subject to the budget coming up. So we're just waiting to sort of see how that goes. But we've also seen quite a lot of traction out in the UAE with people that we're talking to, some early stage VCs, and also in the US at the same time. So we are seeing a lot of traction, and it's getting there. We've had, like I say, a few soft commitments in the UK as well, but it has been challenging. It's taken we're having to kiss a lot of frogs to find that prince. But it's fun. I'm getting to meet a lot of people. The connections are really worth the while as well, if not for the cash.
Yeah, keep going. I'm sure that you find a way to find many other poles and bigger poles as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
You project 150 million pounds as an annual revenue by 2030. So I want to ask you a question. What gives you the confidence that you're going to go to that scale? And also, what kind of infrastructure or partnership do you think you need to put in place in order for you to get there?
That was, funnily enough, actually, that was a very conservative sort of first view. That we've got some updates since then of where that could potentially be by 2030. I suppose subject to how we're rolling. So obviously, we've got our first sets of revenue sort of agreed in principle. We know exactly what our production volumes are going to look like. That 150 million is actually now looking quite conservative and very, very achievable in what we can achieve. And it all comes down to what we can produce in gas and sell and trade on the market, how much oil we can produce to then start refining the different fractions to start supplying the diesel and other products. And what we're finding actually when we have these conversations, they are quite, again, it's that no-brainer sort of mentality. They're quite easy sells. You go to a transport company of some sort or some form of service company that's using vehicles, and you say, I'm going to switch out your sort of diesel, or even people that have been exploring HVO as a product, and say, instead of paying them high prices, I'm going to supply you a green diesel for the same price that you can buy your existing diesel, but it's net zero. But it's exactly the same group of hydrocarbons that you're currently buying from the pump at the moment. And the sell is easy, it is in the sense of we can just go straight to trial, prove it works, and then go there. And that's sort of how the conversations are going. So we're quite confident that revenue stream is going to be far more than that by 2030 for sure.
That's interesting. So looking forward to get 2030 to see, how much of a millionaire you become.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're talking about in terms of competition here. So some serious player here. So the likes of Chevron and also Neste, they're exploring as well renewables. So I want to find out, so what, according to you, make Zenco grown, not extracted approach truly disruptive in that crowded landscape?
I think when people look at biofuels or bioproducts to make sort of the alternatives, people are making, for example, diesel straight from vegetable oil rather than creating a crude oil from that. And I think when you look at people like Chevron, who are effectively taking crops from Northern America or the Northern US, and then bringing that down, pressing the oils out of it, hydrotreating it to create effectively a diesel, and then running that through and selling that as an alternative to the extracted version. That's a very much niche kind of product. And then you look at other companies like Neste and people like that who are then taking waste oils and doing a very sort of similar process, having to treat that oil, hydrotreating it to effectively put the hydrogen that's needed into it, to then create an alternative to what's the sort of diesel part of the fractions of oil actually is as well. The difference that we're doing is we're creating the base crude oil is a virgin crude oil in comparison to a vegetable oil, which can then be run through a fractional distillation to create all the different fractions that come out of it, not just diesel. So we can make aviation fuel, marine shipping fuel, diesel, gasoline, like I say, naphtha, bitumen, heavy oils, all the same stuff that would generally come out of an oil refinery can come out of what the crude oil that we're making. So we looked at it slightly differently and said, if we're going to follow a model, instead of trying to sell a diesel, let's try and sell a barrel of oil instead, because that's what everyone does. When you look at the oil sector, you've got your upstream entities, which will extract the oil, work out what the levelized cost is, add a bit of profit, look at the index, and then decide whether they're going to sell that oil. We're following that exact same model, but we're just making it from a virgin crop, a marine crop as well. So we're the only people sort of using a marine crop to make this product for sure, and do it. So that's what makes us slightly different from everyone else.
And that's interesting because this approach as well, as far as I could see, where you're taking a crude oil and then you're also refining that. So in a different country, it support as well local supply chain. So because I know that at the moment you're targeting the UK, but obviously in the plan that you have, it's question of going as well in other places, like for example Africa, so and any other emerging markets where the resources there. So that is a important thing to mention.
Yeah, I think another thing to sort of add to that as well is it's really, and the reason for doing that as well is because predominantly we're using solar to power the facilities to produce the oils. That was always to make the base crude oil or the base gas a net zero product, or even the biofertilizer as the byproduct from the gas. We wanted that to be completely net zero in accordance with ISCC. So we knew we had to run that all on solar power. But to try and do that in the UK, for example, is very volatile. We know we get a lot of sun in the summer, but we get next to no sun in the winter. So it becomes really difficult to sort of manage that from a production perspective.
Yeah.
But we know the Northern Hemisphere is actually really good at, obviously, at wind. We know we can get a lot of consistent wind from that. So we can still use net zero energy to still power them refineries. So if we can bring that product up to the more key markets that we're sort of seeing in the Northern Hemisphere, or even the Southern Hemisphere as well, but we can't get the same sunlight, for example, we could use wind and bring the crop there to further refine it and sell it in the markets.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. I think it's so important just to mention that. So let's sort of start closing up this conversation, because I know it's been fast already, but we need to draw that to a close. But I have 3 questions I want to go through, and I want to sort of focus a bit more on the why, the why that really move people, starting by you first.
Yeah.
You're leading a company that challenges the very foundation of modern industry. But what drives you personally to take on something this ambitious? Because I know you were doing solar, right? It was already, let's say, something ambitious, but if I may say, you were in a mature technology, known market, there were some challenges, but at least you could see where to go. But in here, completely different approach, right? So disrupt an industry that's been running for decades and decades. Yeah. So what drives you personally to make it happen?
So I suppose first and foremost, before being a founder, I'm a father. I have 2 very young girls, sort of 6 nearly and 10 just. And I look at the future that they're going to sort of go into. And I think the trouble with electrification, and obviously I was a party to that problem as well when I was just doing the solar side, was that the infrastructure is still 50 to 100 years away from becoming mature enough to be able to switch everything over to electric only. And I think to myself, they'll be be grandkids or even great grandkids by the time it actually comes to a point where a difference is actually going to be made. And I really want to see a difference in my lifetime, let alone what they're going to be inheriting. So that was sort of one of the biggest drivers for me. And when we became a casualty of what was happening in the electrical infrastructure, I quickly realized that, being climate, still focusing very much on protecting the planet, still very much focused on protecting our oceans. That's still one thing that Paul mentioned that I haven't actually brought up yet. But the ocean is a real big part of my life. I really feel drawn to the waters, and I really want to see that repair from the causes of climate change that's had on that, such as rising acidification, which was the reason for developing the offshore floating solar array and having the seaweed incorporated into it as well, because seaweed, as we know, is a big carbon sponge and reduces that carbon from the ocean, which then in turn reduces acidification, bringing water quality better, meaning that fish can come back to sort of raising fish stocks and breeding and repopulating and increasing the biodiversity that we're seeing a loss of in the ocean at the moment. So combined with what I want my daughters to inherit, combined with the fact that I really want to see the ocean repair and I want to see it done in my lifetime, I thought I really need to quickly flick the switch a bit and find an alternative product that works in the existing infrastructure, rather than trying to find a product to go into an infrastructure that isn't nowhere near ready yet for us to make that difference. And that was the biggest driver for me. And it's even not that, even to this day, it's like, I need this to work. I wake up every day thinking I've got to get, just even if it's just one small step forward, at least it's a step forward in the right direction, ready to make that change. And that's a personal need that I bring to the table every single day, is wanting to see that change and see us move forward towards a greener and future, but using existing infrastructure. One of the other big things I just want to quickly add as well, that people don't really sort of talk about, is embodied carbon. And again, I've done a lot of work around embodied carbon. Obviously, whilst I've been working on my journey, I've also done a stint in construction and things like that as well. And we talk about a lot of embodied carbon in construction, but never in energy. And actually, when you look at the infrastructure, there's already a lot of embodied carbon in that existing gas and oil infrastructure. Sure. We talk about building a brand new electrical infrastructure, but we're not talking about the carbon intensity of actually building that infrastructure at the same time. And we always talk about repurposing and recycling. Well, why, this is exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to repurpose and recycle something that's already been carbon spent and has already got that embodied carbon in it. And that's another really big focus for me, is we need to use what we've already got, not try and build something new every single time.
So in other words, obviously, before we start generating green power, we're polluting before that, right? So you want to
exactly. Yeah, exactly. What's net zero about that?
I hear what you say. I would have loved for everybody attending COP30 at the moment in Belém in Brazil to have that sense of urgency that you just sort of laid out in front of us. I'm sure that would have made a lot of difference in the conversation, negotiation happening right now at this precise moment. Yeah. So Now, I talked about your why, which is pretty clear for me, and I think I love it. I think it works for me. But now, for investor watching, right, beyond the numbers, which I'm sure they will look at the return, does it match, the IRR, returns, ROI? Yes, that's fine. Why should they believe in Zenco? What kind of is the emotional, world-changing reason to back your mission? Are you also calling them to look at their daughters and sons? So, what would you say?
I think with any investor, obviously they want to see the returns. I think that's fundamentally any project that you take forward has to be a bankable project. So there has to be money in it. It has to be making profit. That's set in stone. That has to happen. But I think ultimately, when you're looking at the sort of impact that investors want to have, and what they're trying to do, I think one of the biggest obstacles, and we see this, should I say, we see the consequences of these things happening now, where people have made investment based on impact and it's not worked out because the numbers haven't worked out, is things like direct air carbon capture. We look at what's happened at Norfolk with batteries and things like that. And we need to ensure that we're not going to make the same mistake because we're going too far forward into creating new technology, that there's still a lot of uncertainty about how it goes. I'm not saying that it doesn't need to happen. It does need to happen, but I think there's still a step missing from us getting to that point. And I almost see us as that sort of step within the bridge to achieve net zero. So if investors really want to make an impact and they want to make a return, I think by supporting Zenco, they have a much more better option of doing that on something, creating a product which we use on a daily basis. We're using our lives on a daily basis, but then being able to look at it and go, you know what, I filled my car up today on petrol that was grown, not extracted. I think that has a slightly different edge to what then, I've just seen a big direct air carbon capture actually absorb carbon from the air, but it's not doing the yields that it said it was going to do. I think that it's just trying to put the narrative around, tech versus biology, if you like, or formulation or chemistry. I think that's where it sits. So when you invest in us, it is very much focusing on the chemistry element of what we're trying to do, not necessarily the tech. The tech's been proven. We know the tech works. We know that it produces what we want to do. We're focusing on the chemistry in order to then create the products that work in existing infrastructure. So again, highlight what I said at the beginning of the call. We haven't got a technology issue. We've got an infrastructure issue. And that's what people are invested in us get to sort of be able to say, I've invested in the future of oil and gas, not, next generation oil and gas, not brand spanking new technology that we still don't know works yet.
It's very clear. So, I was going to move to my next, my next and last question, but the people watching us, and I want to thank them for watching us. I think that's always a pleasure. And we're doing that, obviously, for them to get to know you, Sean McNeill, but also to get to know Zenco Group, and hopefully as well to see whether or not they want to be part of your journey. And you'd be happy to know that there's actually a couple of questions that have come up, and I want to share that with you. So I think we'd like to address that just as a show of obviously thanks for the people who are watching us at the moment. So 2 questions. I can see only 1 question, Carl, but I just start with 2 questions. 2 questions that may be both sides of the coin. So as a startup with fundamentally unique but logical solution to a real problem, global problem, what would you describe as your biggest challenge and biggest frustration? That's a good question.
It is. It is something I think about on an hourly basis, I think, more than a daily basis. One of the biggest challenges is obviously growth. Trying to scale this business, it isn't necessarily just about the cash. We know cash exists. We know cash is available. And if the numbers stack, you'll be able to get funded. That's not necessarily the problem. One of the biggest issues that you're always going to face is that we know we need to work across that equator belt, which is why Africa is such a big opportunity for us. But it's the political side of being able to get permits and licenses to operate in them countries to be able to scale, and then do that in a timely fashion as well, and not be sort of wrapped up in red tape in order to sort of deliver this. So one of the biggest challenges for me is the political red tape it takes, and the political issues in different regions to be able to scale the business, to fundamentally start supplying that global problem, as Carlos put. And that's a big frustration. It really, really is. Thinking that we're going to go into a country and we're going to spend 5 years just negotiating with politics before we can actually get to a point where we can put a spade in the ground. That's one of the biggest challenges that we need to try and overcome. But one of the things that I'm trying to do at the moment is work with people like yourself, Tony, obviously, who have very good access into that and potentially allow us to sort of bring that red tape down. And some of our other advisors as well that sits on the board that are involved in the UK politics side, and help us sort of bring down that red tape so we can move this quickly at scale. So yeah, that's probably one of the biggest frustrations.
Excellent. So, Carl, I'm sure that I'm hoping that you obviously listen to the response, and then you're happy with that. So, if not, just let us know. We'll be closing down the conversation very shortly, but definitely still around for the next 5 minutes. So, just the time for me to move to my next question. This is Dave. This time, he says that has Zenco achieved EIS, SEIS approval? I'm sure if you're an investor in the UK, you would understand that. So,
Yeah, I'll go back to my other problem that Carl brought up. It's EIS and SEIS. So we're an energy generator. So as an energy generator or producing biofuels, unfortunately, we're not eligible for EIS or EIS. So we did try in the very early days to get that. It was important for us to be able to produce the product or energy or oil and gas. But we do honestly feel that the rewards of what we're going to produce, and we've de-risked it as much as we possibly can with financial structures for the projects, in order to say that we don't necessarily need to be EIS or SEIS registered. One of the other big benefits of what we're doing and how we've structured the model as well, I just want to quickly add, is that our downstream side of the business is going to be operated in the Humber Freeport. The Freeport zone comes with its own benefits outside of EIS and SEIS. So we're not having to pay national insurance contributions. We get tax discounts on capex as well for what we invest in the site. We don't have to pay any stamp duties. We don't have to pay business rates for 10 years. So there's a lot of key tax benefits of being on the Freeport that we don't otherwise get. What we wouldn't get if we was on the mainland benefiting from SEIS or EIS. And the other key thing as well is that we are patenting our formulas in the UK. And because of that, we get to benefit from a scheme called the Patent Box scheme. Patent Box means that any product that we sell that is related to our patent, we only have to pay 10% corporation tax on, rather than the 25% tax that we're seeing now. So we're really trying to build the business in a tax efficient way by benefiting from the schemes that are already in place. But unfortunately, EIS and SEIS isn't one of them.
Excellent. So it looks like there's another question that has arrived. It's a great discussion. That's Arish. So Arish is saying that, I don't know if it's he or she, but the person saying that, is there any documentation you can share? And let me just respond to the second part. Is the call recorded? I missed the intro. So first of all, why did you miss the intro, right? So we advertised before saying that, we're going to be live today starting at 3:15. You have no excuse to be late. Well, I'm just joking, obviously. So the answer to that is yes. First of all, this conversation is broadcasted on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and all of that. And each of those platforms, starting with LinkedIn, obviously, as soon as this finished, the recording is generated automatically. Or you could look at that obviously on the YouTube. So yes, you'd have the opportunity just to take your finger, just scroll back down, and then you'll be able to catch the intro. Now for the documentation, I also will leave Sean respond to that, but I could already say that you could also find information on their website. But Sean, maybe there's something else they want to add to that.
Yeah, no, if there's anything in particular, any specific documentation that you're interested in or you'd like to see, I mean, I'm sure we can put my email address on there, or connect with me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best thing to do, actually. Just send me a connection request. I've jotted your name down, Ari, and I will make sure I reply to you and send any documentation that you need. But I've got a lot of documentation, so just let me know what you'd like to see, and I'll be more than happy to send it over.
Excellent. And for me to say, yeah, definitely you can reach out to Sean on LinkedIn, so he would definitely respond back to you. Or if you can't find him, reach out to me. Make sure that I could obviously put you in contact with him. But if you are a potential investor, potential partner who wants to work with Sean, so reach out to him. That's the reason for us having this conversation, so you can get to know what Zenco is all about. That's a beautiful, beautiful company they're building here. And like I say, so if you're really interested, just make sure that you do reach out, because Sean is having a number of conversations, I'm sure, within the next 6 months or so. So you may not have the kind of opportunity that you have right now at this precise moment. So let me just go back to my last question, Sean, that I had for you. So 10 years from now, right? So when, not if, but when Zenco Vision succeeds, because it will succeed. So according to you, how would the energy landscape look like and the people's lives? So what do you see?
Well, hopefully in 10 years' time, I'm retired and I've sold up and I'm sat on a beach somewhere with a pina colada in hand. That'll be really nice. But no, I think for me, the legacy of what we're trying to do is really important. I'd love to see that in 10 years' time, that people are actively seeing oil being used, being refined, and the fractions being taken out to use in the same products that we use every single day. And we start seeing that positive change that's being made. So, the impact on the ocean that we want to have, I really want to see results and the positivity of what we're doing there. And I'd love to see people being able to sort of buy oil from us. And I'd love to see Zenco as, one of the 10%, supplying 10% of the world's oil demand. Of course, you'd love to see Zenco get to that growth. And I'm sure we'll be able to do that working in partnership with some of the big oil majors. And that would be a sort of key ambition for us as well, as to partner up with them. So, but ultimately, it's not necessarily wanting to see Zenco in the market. It's more just measuring the impact that we've actually had, and being able to see sort of grown, not extracted products, being able to go into existing infrastructure and actually see what we've set out to do actually happening. And that's, I fully anticipate that we are going to get to that point. I'd love to say that we're going to be as big as Aramco and delivering 10 million or 12 million barrels of oil a day. And I honestly hope that we do get to that point, and I won't stop trying. That is definitely much still on my agenda. But I honestly, more importantly, I want to be able to see the seas repaired, CO2 being reduced, the planet coming back into something that I'm proud that my daughters can inherit. And I said the last 10 years was worth, busting my balls for to get to this point. And we're now going into a world where we're seeing change and impact actually happen.
Excellent. I got that feeling that in the next few years, this conversation that we've had today will be legendary. So
you heard it here first.
we need to say. So Sean, it was a pleasure for me to have you. So let me just allow you to go back to obviously your duties, because I'm sure you're working hard at the moment. You're in the middle of a fundraising, and as I say, you're very busy, also preparing a move potentially to Dubai with your family. So the least we can say is like you're missing what to do, right? So you definitely always have a lot on your plate. So I'm sure that's the first conversation. There's many more that we're going to have in the next future. But thank you very much, and we will see you shortly.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Tony. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Sean. So, now you've seen, like I say, so I told you that somebody that was taking up the challenge to sort of rewrite the road of oil and gas. So you have it right in front of you. And as I say, this is the first conversation, but the next few weeks, I'm sure you're going to learn a lot more about these companies, Zenco Group. Make sure that you keep the name in your mind. Yeah. So thank you again, Sean, for sharing both the vision, but also your roadmap. So the story of Zenco reminds me of the future of oil and gas, what it's all about without the extraction. So it's about creation. It's about transforming the infrastructure that we have into a sustainable system we need. And that's how we should approach the challenges that we're seeing at the moment. So to our viewers, what I want to say to you is, I'm hoping that you are inspired by the idea of renewable oil and gas, how we can bring the two together. This is not just a dream, but this can be an industrial reality if you decide to back people like Sean. So this is a company to watch. I strongly believe into that. And also you want to follow the founder. So Sean, I wish you and the company every success on your mission to power the future. And like I say, I got a feeling this very first conversation, you and I, will be legendary in the next few years. So thank you very much, everybody. And it was a pleasure.